Hey there. Don't mind me, I'm just doing my 5 pound weight lifts. Strength in Dungeons and Dragons, 5th edition specifically, has been a debated topic, especially for someone like me who played a martial strength character for about 3 to 4 years. There's a lot of discussion around it, and you might be asking yourself, well, what is there to talk about? Strength is quite self-explanatory. You are strong, you lift things, and you lift things. Not to mention also punching things quite hard, if not extremely hard. But when you think about it, when you really get down to it, strength is an interesting thing. You probably see by the title of this video, is strength bad? No. No, it's not. Is it good? Debatable, actually. The reason I say this is a debatable topic is because strength within itself, when applied to something like barbarian or fighter, is not that bad. It's really not. In fact, that's probably the stat you want to go with. You're obviously not going to want to have a big buff paladin only have a +2 modifier in strength. You're going to want to pump that up as much as you can. And every party needs a strong guy. You know, one who's really good at athletics, carry weight. And strength also dictates carrying and dragging and anything that you do with your arms or legs. The main problem that strength has is if you're not playing a barbarian, paladin, fighter. Is that it? Is that... Hold on, is that it? Barbarian? I guess cleric. Yeah, so I suppose in some edge cases where you want to use strength as a cleric, barbarian, fighter, and paladin are just about the only ones you're going to want to use strength with. And you might think to yourself, well, doesn't the same go with intelligence? You wouldn't want intelligence on a barbarian. Except here's why that's not quite true. Strength dictates, some important mechanics like athletics and heavy weapon damage and that sort of thing. But it doesn't do a whole lot, other than that. With intelligence, you have investigation, nature, religion, all these other useful skills that will help you understand your Dungeon Master's world and what's going on and finding important things and that sort of thing. I say with wisdom, you don't want to dump wisdom because wisdom is in charge of perception, one of the most important and most commonly rolled stats in the entire game. But dumping strength, the only scenario you're going to be caught out in is if you have to make a strength saving throw or you have to climb a mountain. And there are several things you can do without strength to climb a mountain or not get pummeled on a failure of a strength saving throw. And this is not to, again, bash strength generally. It's just, I think there should be a little more going for it, you know what I mean? Because here's everything that wisdom can do. Everything charisma can do. Everything dexterity can do. Like, you get the point, right? And this is what strength can do. I just feel like there could be more going on. What exactly? Hard to say, because strength is one of those things, when you really get down to it, it's strength. You can't get magical about it. It's not supposed to be magical or anything. It's supposed to be... It also just occurred to me that strength also dictates jumping. That thing you did like twice in the campaign? That the DM actually looked at the calculation for how jumping works. No one does that, by the way. So you might be asking yourself, what to do with strength? Well, actually, there is something to do with it. That can probably help alleviate some of the issues strength has, which is not doing a whole lot. And there's an optional rule where you can roll, say, an intimidation check with strength instead of charisma. And I think that should just not be an optional rule, that should just be in the game. You know what I mean? That should be, when you're making an intimidation roll, you just have to pick one of the two. Just as is. Same with like a performance roll. Perhaps your performance takes a lot of physical strength. Why not roll using strength instead of charisma? Not every performance is charismatic. For example, lifting weights does not take charisma. Unless you're doing... Which, I mean, if you're going for that, then sure, alright, yeah, but... It's a weight. Strength should just be able to opt into more scenarios than just athletics. Just generally. It should not be locked away behind a optional rule or what have you. Because when you really think about it, it makes sense to use strength for different scenarios that would, usually call for dex. Because as it stands, if you are not playing like a strong martial class, there's almost no reason to just not dump strength into the negatives. Especially if you're playing a wizard who can fly and ignore several mechanics that strength would normally govern. Again, climbing, jumping, you have spells for these. What's the point of investing into strength and all of that when you could just cast one spell and get what a max strength character would get anyway? And perhaps there are some uses to strength that I have not thought of for this video, and people will correct me if I'm wrong or being a little silly about some of the things that strength can do, or the limits of it. But I wanted to make this video because when I was playing my second D&D character, who was really strength-based, I started to run into a lot of problems where I was playing a martial class, with the big sword and the big shield and big armor, but it felt like I was doing the same thing over and over again. This is going back to the Are Martials Bad video, which you can see up in one of these corners, where I talk about that whole thing with martials and whatnot. It's more of a strength issue at this point, I think. That martials within themselves could obviously use work, and some of you in the comments left very interesting comments, actually, regarding, like, alternate fighter made by Laser Llama or something like that. But strength within itself just feels a little plain. Dexterity can do a lot of what strength can already do, but more. I did see online, Reddit if you want to know, that dexterity gets away with a little too much, and that's usually on the fault of the Dungeon Master. This is mainly pertaining to acrobatics versus athletics, which, let's be real, there's probably been a lot of scenarios where your Dungeon Master said, roll either or. And that's fair to an extent, but when you are gripping rocks, flying up a cliff face with your hands, you're not going to use acrobatics for that. You're not flipping around and jumping from pole to pole. You are grabbing rocks and you are... So I think part of strength's problems kind of lie with the Dungeon Master, but just to blame the Dungeon Master seems like a bit of a lazy way of going about it. I do think that strength genuinely does have its issues. By no means is it bad when you apply it to things that scale off of strength, like, again, Barbarian, Paladin, yada yada. I think strength is great. I just wish it did a little more than it does, because as it stands, if you're playing literally anything else, you're gonna dump it. Let's be real. Like, I've played like 3 different wizards. All of them had like 7 strength. What's the point of like keeping it at 10 and like dumping something else? A lot of people say you can dump charisma if you're not playing a sorcerer or bard or what have you. But the one scenario where you need to convince an NPC to not kill you and you roll like a -3 on your persuasion check, you're going to be really rethinking that whole scenario. So, in conclusion here, is strength bad? No, definitely not. Could it be better? Yeah, definitely. It could be so much better. Let's be real, it could just be so much better. And I think just allowing strength to roll for more skills and abilities than it currently does would just fix a lot of problems and being a little more strict on what acrobatics can do and what athletics can do could also help alleviate the whole dex is better than strength argument that people have, which yeah, it has its points, but it seems a bit redundant. I hope this was a fun video for you. I hope this helped you in some way. I just wanted to talk about strength because it's a thought I've had on my mind for... What year is it? Yeah, about like 4 years now. I bid you adieu, a good night, a good afternoon. It's 4 right now, so have a good 4 o'clock. Adios.